men certainly had me beat, muscles bulging under their black suits, their thick bodies striding forward with purpose. They all stood tall and still for a moment, as their cold, killer's eyes surveyed the surroundings, reptilian and emotionless. I heard more SUVs coming to a screeching halt in front of my house, and soon the sound of many dogs barking echoed across the forest. I knew they were tracking me, and they would soon find me and kill me. No one would ever know what happened here, least of all me. And no one would ever be able to prevent it from happening again, with the destruction of the sole living witness to the bizarre replacement of my family. I ran towards a large rock formation I knew nearby, with small indentations, allowing a man to fit in the wide cracks of the 30-foot-tall cylinders of stone. This was a place I liked to come and sit during happier times, sometimes just meditating and listening to the sound of the birds and breathing in the clean air of the woods. Now, I hoped in my time of desperation that it would come to my aid again. I heard the dogs getting closer and saw the lights separate into smaller and smaller groups as the agents combed through every inch of the forest, sweeping their rifles up and down and left to right as they looked into every crevice and behind every tree. I saw a single light drawing near. My heart seemed to stop. I knelt down low, feeling the ground with my trembling fingers. I found a large flat stone that must have weighed a good 10 pounds. Making myself as small a target as possible, I waited for the figure to pass right by my hiding spot. Even though this happened a couple months ago now, I still remember the rising waves of anxiety that gripped my heart as this assassin stood before me. As soon as the light began turning to examine the dark corners of the indentation I crouched in, I sprang forwards, waves of adrenaline giving me amazing strength and reflexes. The man saw me at the last moment, his eyes widening as his finger began to tighten on the trigger. And then I smashed the rock into the front of his skull. His neck twisted to the side, his eyes instantly drooping as his body went slack. I dropped the rock onto the leaf-strewn ground and caught him in the same movement, dragging his limp body back into the shallow groove of the rock where I hit. I took the automatic rifle off of him, flicking off the light and feeling around in his belt for extra magazines of ammunition. I found 3 extra clips. I fumbled around until I found a latch to release the magazines, unclipping them one after another and shoving them into my pockets. The man quickly started to stir, groaning and moving his head slowly from side to side, his eyes still clenched shut. He mumbled, his eyes beginning to flutter. My head. Jesus. What? His blue eyes opened suddenly, and he looked directly at me, an icy hatred changing his expression in a single moment. Oh, it's you, Julius Thorne. He spat my name with venom, staring directly at me, even as blood trickled down his cheeks from his forehead. Yeah, it's me, I said. What the fuck is going on right now? Why did you psychopaths murder my neighbor and try to kill me? He just shook his head and kept his mouth tightly shut. I waited a few seconds, giving him a chance to answer. When I realized he wasn't planning on talking, I sighed, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. Raising the rifle up above my head, I quickly brought the butt of the gun down into the center of his nose. I heard it crunch, a fountain of blood exploding from the front of his face. He started to open his mouth to scream, but I turned the gun around and pointed it straight at his right eye. If you scream, I'll kill you right here, I said. I have nothing to lose right now, and I'd rather go down fighting. He bit his lip so deeply that a small trickle of blood began to stream down his chin, but he didn't scream or cry out, despite the immense pain he looked to be in. Now, maybe we can try this again, I said, giving him a grim smile. Why did you guys want to kill me? Why are you chasing me? We are agents who have been tasked with detecting and destroying anomalies that have arisen across the United States, he said, scowling at me with hatred, his words coming out somewhat distorted as he constantly spat blood. People usually call us the cleaners. Mostly we deal with incidents in small towns, like this one. Though sometimes shit hits the fan in the cities too. Hell, just last week we had a werewolf in New York City. Press thought it killer who ripped apart his victims with a knife. But any coroner worth his salt would immediately be able to tell it had actually been Claws and Fangs. But we found him and brought him in for containment. He had already killed 3 joggers and 7 homeless people by then. Yeah, so what does any of that have to do with me? I asked, furious. I hated these men so badly at that moment. I had asked for help, and instead, assassins had come to my side. Your wife and daughter are dead, he replied. But you're not the first one to call and say you found the grave of your family. In every other case, the police found the people still alive and healthy in the house, and the graves totally empty by the time we got there. But there were always indications that the individual still living had changed. They always began to show psychotic and violent behavior, and inevitably, they would kill their own family members, neighbors, hell, anyone in the area. When the anomaly is allowed to proceed, the entire town often ends up being destroyed. We lost over 10,000 people in a single incident last year. So we come in and contain it by killing anyone associated with the anomaly to stop it from spreading. Because it does spread, and it seems to spread by association. It starts with a couple people on the street, then the rest of their house, then their next door neighbors, and keeps going outwards, like ripples spreading outwards in a pond. By this point, I heard dogs getting closer and closer, and saw lights flashing through the trees in the distance, aimed in my direction. I quickly ripped a strip of fabric from the agent's shirt and tied his hands and feet before binding his mouth so he couldn't scream. I knew they would still probably find him within 10 minutes or so, but that might be all I needed to get out of here. And now